The master key scraped my new deadbolt, jammed, and refused to turn. Karen cursed my name into her phone before I even opened the door. "He's trespassing in his own home," she screamed to dispatch. Eyes wild, badge-shaped HOA lanyard swinging like a weapon of authority. "I'm Daniel Reyes, 41. A widowed father raising my 16-year-old son Mateo in the quiet cul-de-sac we'd called home for a decade. Our HOA president, Karen Whitfield, ran Maple Ridge Estates like a private kingdom, enforcing rules nobody else remembered voting on. She fined neighbors for wind chimes, mismatched mailbox flags, even a birdbath she called visually disruptive to community harmony. Everyone whispered about her behind closed blinds, but nobody dared challenge her openly. Her husband sat on the county zoning board. I'd stayed quiet for years, paying my dues, mowing on schedule, hoping quiet compliance would keep my family invisible to her wrath. Then Karen announced a new policy. The HOA would hold master keys for emergency access to every home in the community. I refused to hand mine over, citing basic privacy, and within a week my mailbox sprouted 3 separate violation notices. "Noncompliance breeds chaos," Karen told the board, staring straight at me like I'd personally threatened her entire subdivision. A neighbor pulled me aside and whispered that Karen already had duplicate keys cut for half the street. No permission asked. I didn't believe it until I found a fresh scratch mark circling my old lock, thin and deliberate, like a key testing its fit. I installed a new deadbolt that weekend, quietly, telling no one, just in case the scratch marks meant what I feared. 2 days later, Karen left a notice taped to my door. Failure to provide access constitutes a violation under Section 12. I called the HOA office asking which bylaw actually authorized master keys. Nobody could produce the document she kept citing. Karen showed up unannounced at my porch, smiling too wide, asking why I made things so difficult for everyone else. "There is no Section 12, I told her calmly, and her smile cracked for just a second before snapping back into place. She started parking her golf cart outside my house daily, monitoring compliance, she said, though no other home got that treatment. Mateo noticed it first, telling me Karen photographed our windows and driveway every afternoon like she was building a file. A retired neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, confided that Karen entered his house once while he traveled. "Just checking the thermostat," she claimed. He said nothing was stolen, but his safe had clearly been moved 3 inches from where he always left it. I began locking every window, installing a cheap camera above my porch, telling myself I was simply being cautious, not paranoid. Karen escalated fines against me weekly. Trash cans out too early, grass a half-inch too tall, a flagpole improperly angled. I paid every fine to avoid conflict, but the harassment never slowed. If anything, her visits grew more frequent and pointed. She cornered me at a board meeting, demanding my new key for community safety. Her voice sweet, her eyes sharp as glass. "Absolutely not," I said, and the room went silent, several neighbors suddenly finding their shoes fascinating instead of meeting my eyes. Karen smiled and said something I'd remember for weeks. "Everyone complies eventually, Daniel. One way or another, they always do." That night, my porch camera caught her walking slow circles around my house at 11, testing each window with gloved hands. I saved the footage quietly, said nothing, and started documenting every visit, every fine, every strange encounter she orchestrated against us. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Karen stopped visiting, stopped fining, and I let myself believe the pressure had finally eased. Mateo started sleeping easier, and I almost convinced myself we'd simply been paranoid about an overzealous, harmless HOA president. I even ran into Karen at the mailbox once. She smiled warmly, Asked about Mateo's baseball season. Seemed almost human again. I should have known better. With Karen. Silence was never peace, it was always just the reload before the next shot. The letter arrived certified. A formal eviction recommendation for repeated bylaw violations. My signature forged at the bottom of an agreement. I never signed anything granting HOA access. Yet there it was. My name in handwriting that wasn't remotely close to mine. I demanded the original document from the HOA attorney, who suddenly couldn't locate it, citing administrative delays and dead air. Karen told other neighbors I'd finally agreed to cooperate, spinning a forged signature into a public narrative of my surrender. I confronted her directly, holding the letter up, asking who forged my name onto a document I'd never even seen before. Paperwork gets messy, she shrugged, not even bothering to look surprised, like forgery was simply another Tuesday task for her. I filed a police report that week, but the responding officer said forgery cases needed more concrete proof before they'd investigate. Karen's husband, the zoning commissioner, called the department personally that same afternoon. My case mysteriously stalled in review indefinitely. Neighbors who'd once whispered support now avoided me entirely, afraid Karen's next target would be whoever stood beside me. Only Mr. Alvarez stayed loyal, sliding me copies of old HOA emails proving Karen had ordered duplicate keys months before announcing it. She's been letting herself into houses for a year, he warned me, long before that master key policy ever existed. I started keeping printouts, photos, timestamps, building a folder labeled Simply Karen, growing thicker with every passing humiliating week. Mateo asked why we couldn't just move, and I told him some fights matter more than comfort, more than convenience. He didn't fully understand yet, but he nodded anyway, the way kids do when they trust you more than logic. The new deadbolt I'd installed weeks earlier suddenly made sense to Karen. She'd need a fresh key cut to match it. I never gave her one. Whatever key she carried now was outdated, useless. A relic of the lock she'd already tested once. That single detail, small and forgotten, was about to matter more than either of us could have possibly predicted. Karen announced an emergency inspection sweep, citing a supposed gas leak report nobody else in the neighborhood had actually filed. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Alvarez. She's heading your way. Cameras rolling. Don't let her provoke you. I stepped outside just as Karen's golf cart pulled up, her master key already gripped tight, gleaming under the porch light. Routine safety check, she announced loudly, for the benefit of neighbors peeking through blinds up and down the street. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, and told her plainly she had no legal right to enter without my consent. We'll see about that, she snapped, jamming the outdated key into my new deadbolt with the confidence of someone certain of victory. The key wouldn't turn. She jiggled it harder, face reddening, muttering that the lock was clearly malfunctioning and needed replacement. It's not malfunctioning, I said. It's simply not your key anymore. Her expression shifted from confusion into something colder, meaner. Karen yanked out her phone and dialed 911. Voice shaking with manufactured panic. A man is barricading himself in a community home. She claimed I'd threatened her, blocked emergency access, and endangered the neighborhood, every word calculated, rehearsed, and completely false. Dispatch patched the call through, and a familiar voice answered, calm and steady. This is Officer Reyes. Please state your emergency. Karen froze mid-sentence. Officer Reyes wasn't just any responding officer. He was Mateo, my son. Now a rookie patrol officer. He'd been called in early that shift, covering for a colleague, never expecting the emergency call to lead straight home. I watched my son's cruiser pull up minutes later, lights silent, his expression unreadable as he approached Karen and me both.
Mom,
Please state exactly what happened, Matteo said, professional and unshaken, though his eyes flicked toward me with quiet worry. Karen repeated her fabricated story, louder now, insisting I'd threatened her safety and blocked mandatory HOA emergency entry procedures. Matteo asked to see the master key. Karen handed it over, still confident, still certain the system would protect her as always. He compared it against my deadbolt serial number, confirmed publicly it matched a lock replaced 11 days earlier. Useless and outdated. So this key couldn't have opened this door tonight, Matteo said evenly. Meaning your emergency call describes something that never happened. Karen's composure cracked for the first time in months, her voice rising into something desperate, no longer performing for neighbors watching. Matteo radioed additional units, mentioning an open department inquiry into unauthorized entries reported across 3 separate Maple Ridge households. Detectives arrived within the hour, cross-referencing Karen's master key log against burglary complaints filed quietly over the past year. Security footage from Mr. Alvarez's camera, time-stamped and untouched, placed Karen at multiple homes she'd never been authorized to enter. Karen was arrested that night on charges of forgery, unlawful entry, and filing a false police report against a neighbor. The HOA board dissolved within the month, replaced by an elected committee that immediately banned any future master key policy entirely. Months later, Matteo and I repainted our mailbox together, laughing at how the wrong key finally opened the right kind of justice.